I am Danielle. Welcome into another episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get into the episode, just wanted to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in episode 3 of season 2 of The Bad Batch. So if you haven't checked that episode out yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to Disney Plus, watch that episode, and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show.
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
All right, joining with me to break down episode 3 of season 2 of the Bad Batch series, it's Jon Jon Rico.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going well. Back-to-back Star Wars videos. This is getting good.
Hell yes.
This is right up your alley. I know, we kind of both like all of the same things, but I always say this. I'm a little bit more Marvel, you're a little bit more DC and Star Wars. But
I'm everything. I'm everything.
I always show more love to the Marvel stuff, but we're in this lull of Marvel. But so now is the opportunity where we're like going through everything else. This is the everything else video recaps.
Yeah, about damn time.
but Bad Batch, it's back.
Oh yeah, with the Force.
Episode 3. I mean, just like episode 1 and 2 premiere. I mean, this was an awesome next episode. I mean, and I was not expecting to have an entire, centralized episode on, the character you were asking about last video. The one, the only Crosshair.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'll go right into it with the only pop culture reference I have for this particular episode. And it's when Crosshair, we see him like waking up and going to the cafeteria and going to sit and eat. And it's just a very stereotypical, almost like out of a high school movie, which I will say Mean Girls. And he's looking for a place to sit, and he goes to sit down with some of the other clone troopers. And they get up and leave. It's just like the scene in Mean Girls where they're like,
"It's against the rules, and you can't sit with us." Whatever. Those rules aren't real. You can't sit with us!
I mean, we could just kind of re-edit this to make it seem like he's just in high school and having a very bad day.
Yeah, for real.
But I mean, other than that, I think the episode was great. I definitely know right away because you texted me right after you saw it. That's why I know exactly what time you watched it today. I want to hear from you. What were some of your initial impressions from episode 3, and what did you, I guess, find the most interesting out of this one? Because it was a very centralized plot, but still there was a lot of stuff that happened in one episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It was I thought it was a fantastic episode from start to finish. From not just like the animation design, because the world of Death 6 looked fantastic. Like that opening shot was incredible. Yeah. I've always loved the way that the animation quality has kind of evolved as the years go by. Of course, it's expected. But when you watch those old Clone Wars episodes to what it's become now, and it's like that same style, but just a little bit more refined, it's just really, really cool to watch. But yeah, as I was saying last week, how there was no Crosshairs in that first 2-part finale. We got a whole freaking episode about him, which was fantastic. And I thought it really did exactly what I was hoping for, which is kind of dive into what his headspace is kind of currently at after the events of the finale. We kind of learned a little bit more of what happened to him after the finale. He was left on that Camino platform for about 30 days. Basically, they say like 32 rotations. So I'm assuming that's days. But then he's also kind of like no longer entrusted as like a leader within the Empire. He's kind of like this kind of outcast guy, like you were saying, like no one, you don't even want to sit with him at lunch. Like that's kind of like, dang, he's kind of like, it's the fall from grace basically that Crosshairs has had from season 1 to season 2. And I think that's going to be a really cool kind of character arc for him going forward as the season progresses. So just to kind of start things off, I was just kind of really happy that we got really a whole episode just kind of based around Crosshairs and what he's been up to, and especially to make up for not seeing them for the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they could have done this where they broke away during the action in the first 2 episodes and kind of showed us side by side what was happening with Crosshairs. But I think they did this in a really good way by kind of devoting, the first 2 episodes to the Bad Batch crew and then the third episode to Crosshair. And it's kind of just like, giving us the mirror image look at the 2 kind of central groups, I guess, that we're following throughout the entire series type of thing. So
Yeah.
instead of breaking away from any of the actions, just like the first 2 episodes, we had a lot of action in this episode. So instead of breaking away and kind of making an awkward break, we got 2 separate episodes. And I think that was the best way they could have done that.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, we were kind of saying also last week, I think that Andor has really kind of helped enhance the viewing of this show. I think that's why it was kind of a smart decision to wait to release it now as opposed to last summer when it was planned to come out. Because a lot of the context of the way the Empire is being run right now, like especially like in their kind of like their heyday, as they're starting to occupy all these planets, and then of course again like we saw last week, or in Andor, how like the Empire is kind of in that phase of starting to crumble down in Andor. It's kind of cool to see those contrasting states of the Empire.
Yeah.
It's kind of seeing how people, especially with the fact that Ferrix and Destix are so alike, and the fact that they're these independent planets, so they think, and just kind of being like, hey, we don't want to be a part of your war. We're all done with this. And the Empire's like, we don't remember having a negotiation about this. Like, no, no. So I kind of like that the way those two things kind of mirrored each other. Yeah, there's a lot to like about this episode, and we'll get into more of that.
Absolutely. So you want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Why don't you kick us off with big takeaways? I mean, like we've been saying, there's a lot to talk about, but it was a very centralized plot. So I know we have very similar takeaways, but why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. So one of the things I was really excited to see and also hoping to see this season was the return of Commander Cody, who we haven't seen since, in the timeline, we haven't seen him since Revenge of the Sith, when he betrayed Obi-Wan Kenobi and shot him down on Utapau. But we see him throughout the Clone Wars series as well, of course, being a part of Obi-Wan's squad and all that. But this is our first time kind of getting to see Cody after the events of Order 66 and the start of the Empire, kind of seeing where he's at after the events of that movie. So kind of seeing him and Crosshairs get kind of put together on this mission, of course. So we were talking about how Crosshairs is no longer a leader. He had to report to somebody, and of course that he had to report to Cody in this episode. So seeing them work together was really cool, because even though they're working for a side that we're not supposed to be rooting for in the Empire, we're rooting for these 2 characters because we know that there's something more in those characters that is just beyond them being like pawns for the Empire. We know there's something else that can become more of them. So I think kind of seeing those 2 play off each other was really cool to see. And you can't not like seeing Crosshairs pull off some freaking awesome sniper shots throughout the entire episode. Like, that's why they call them Crosshairs for a reason. I was listening to Star Wars Explained, and he was talking about how Crosshairs is really the only one who's kind of bred for violence, as opposed to the rest of the Bad Batch, where like they have all these abilities, but the other ones can be used for other purposes, whereas he can really only be used for shooting people. So kind of seeing how that kind of plays into his whole character dynamic is really interesting to see. And of course it plays into his favor here in this episode, and of course the way it all wraps up in the end with that standoff between Cody and the governor of Desix brings a whole kind of cool lesson on morality, or kind of like just like debate on morality, of course, for the clones, and something they bring up later on, which you're going to talk about a little bit too, is kind of how like it's all about choices, right? The difference between the clones and the droids is that the droids didn't really have a choice. The clones do have a choice in this sense, and that's what they're all living with right now. It's just living with your choices. So I think there was a really poignant episode as far as that goes, especially when it comes to the clones. Kind of adds a lot, just another layer of depth to those characters. I think is really fascinating. I think this is why it's one of my favorite episodes of any of the shows so far.
Yeah, and just to add on that, because I mean, like you said, this was a very centralized plot, so we have kind of very similar takeaways. We're kind of looking at the same material and stuff like that. But I mean, there were a couple of lines that were said in this episode that almost made it. I know, just kind of like what you said. We know we're not rooting for the Empire, but the way that they described what was happening on the planet when they were sending Cody and Crosshair and the rest of that squad to the planet, they made it seem like separatists invaded a town that was already being run by their governor, type of thing, which is completely the opposite of what happened. And so it's almost like they're feeding them a lie too. So it's like, are these clone troopers really bad guys? Because it's really just like they're doing what they're told, but they're also getting such a different story of what's actually happening to what's like, you know what I mean? So that I thought was really interesting too, because then we're like, well, they're making choices based off of non-facts. So like bad information they're making choices off of, and still Commander Cody's trying to make the best choices that he could make in situations. Like, he didn't want to kill the governor at the end. He didn't want to execute her. He wanted to, like, let's have a peaceful result. Like, I'm sure, he would have been fine with, like, let's take her prisoner type of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Or have her locked up or something like that. But that kind of leads to another thing that, like, I wanted to mention was where we see when Cody and Crosshair are getting back from the mission, and we see how that executing that person really did take a toll on Commander Cody, versus we have Crosshair who just says, look, we're soldiers, we have to do whatever's necessary, type of thing. And that I really, it goes right into what you were saying, where Crosshair is really the one that was made for violence, because even Commander Cody is showing remorse, is showing the pain of having to have had that situation happen that way and unfold. And we're seeing the contrast with Crosshair, who's just like, well, that's what they told me to do. It's what I had to do, type of thing. And I can't agree more with you that just adds that level of depth. And I said it last recap episode, where it makes it seem more live action. It doesn't make it seem like there's just this cartoon and we're looking at cartoon characters. It makes it really feel genuine and feel like emotion is happening, like if it were a live action movie or series. So I can appreciate that, like, a lot more.
Absolutely. And I think we are slowly starting to see, like, those choices weigh on Crosshairs more. I think when at the end of the episode, when he learns that Cody goes AWOL, I think that kind of that conversation kind of goes back into his head, and it starts making him rethink a little things a little bit. He's got that lonely little bunk in there too, so he's left alone. His little thoughts there. It looks almost like putting Harry Potter in the stairs, right? Just the Crosshairs in his little closet, and then leave him be, right? So I think it's going to be a cool progression of his story arc in this season, to see where he goes in his place in the Empire, if he can maybe reconcile with his brothers and little sister again, or older sister, I guess, because she's older.
Yeah. But anyway, you want to get to some predictions?
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. I'm keeping this consistent for this entire series. I really don't have a prediction, but there's something that I want, and I can't wait for, and I meant to say it last episode, and for some reason I just forgot about it, because in the trailers we saw something, and the second that I saw the trailer, I texted you 2 words. I texted you 2 words as soon as we saw the trailer, and that was it, and like a bunch of exclamation points. And those 2 words were Wookie Jedi.
Yeah.
We know he's coming, right?
Gungi himself, yes.
Yeah. I cannot wait for that. Even more importantly is when you showed me what his lightsaber hilt actually looks like. I am so excited now.
Yeah, I really hope they put that out to release for sure.
Yeah. Not only
I got a couple right here behind me. I need more. I got 3 more, a couple more behind here too. I mean,
I am doing my best not to collect other lines, but if they put this out, I might have to get it, because it looks absolutely beautiful. Like, it's awesome looking. But either way, I cannot wait to see him in the series, because ever since Chewbacca, I love Wookiees, and I do want to see some more Jedi, which would be awesome. And best of both worlds, Wookiee Jedi. Like, that's what I want.
Yeah,
So
I highly encourage you to check out the episodes of Clone Wars that he's in too, because it's a returning character. So,
awesome.
and that's when he was a Padawan too. So that's it'd be kind of cool to see how he's progressed in those years, especially knowing he's a survivor of Order 66.
Yeah. Well, I mean that, like I said, I don't really have a prediction for the next episode. I feel like we're gonna go back into the Bad Batch crew and bring up like where they left off type of thing. But Rico, what are some predictions for either the next episode or the rest of the season?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the overall storyline, I would like to see the episodes start to throw in a mix of the two storylines now. Now we've gotten a primarily Bad Batch Center episode and now a Crosshair / Empire based episode. I would like to see kind of like the way they were doing before, where those two stories were kind of intermingling, and we're kind of seeing both progress in one episode, possibly. But as far as this episode goes, what I want to see coming from this episode is I want to see what happened to Cody. Like, did he go AWOL? Did they kill him? Like, who knows what they
Yeah.
did with them? Because the way he Admiral Rampart was talking to Crosshairs about Cody going AWOL was also kind of felt like he could be lying to him as well. So he could be like, oh, he went AWOL. Isn't it kind of weird how all these clones keep disappearing? Like, all the way he's wording it just makes it seems very suspicious to me. But also there are a lot of clones going AWOL too at the same time, so it's not
Yeah.
like he's wrong. But it's also kind of sad because we don't know that he knows that Rex is alive, so I don't expect him to meet up with Rex in any kind of shape or form. But I do want to know what happens to Cody after this episode, of course. Like, I think there's a lot of room you can go with him. There's a lot of guilt he's wearing, of course. It was just really cool to see him again. Like, you knew it was him when you had that helmet and the visor. Like, he has this very specific visor on his helmet that he wears in the movies. I'm like, that's Cody right there. Boom. So yeah, I want more Cody. It was cool to see him again, and I hope to see more of him in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I am totally down with you. I was the wording was very mysterious. Is the best way to put it.
Very Empire like
Yeah.
bullshit type
Yeah.
of words.
Exactly. So we don't know. Yeah, I mean, what's cool is they could go anywhere from there. He could be locked up. He could have escaped.
Mhm.
He could have just all been a lie all along, type of thing. So yeah, it's the sky's the limit on what could be happening with Cody. I would love to see him pop up again. I'm down any characters that they want to have pop up in this series. I'm down for, as long as it makes
Right.
sense to the series. I don't want to just have like a walk-on guest star all of a sudden, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I know what you're saying.
but anyway, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of episode 3, season 2 of The Bad Batch? And what are you most looking forward to in the rest of the series? And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our latest video and audio releases. Bye, everybody!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.